He told her she ruined his life. 5 years later, he saw the twins with his eyes. He had looked at her that day as if she were an interruption rather than a person he once claimed to care about. The office around them was polished and cold, glass walls, chrome edges, a skyline outside that glittered like a promise meant only for him. He stood near the window, hands in his pockets, jaw set with the confidence of a man who believed the world would bend rather than demand he bend with it. His brown eyes were steady, dismissive, and sharp. When he spoke, his voice held no hesitation, no tremor, no struggle. He said the words as though he were simply canceling a meeting that no longer suited his schedule. "You ruined my plans." The sentence struck harder than if he had yelled. Lana had come to him that day with hope, not as some naive girl expecting magic, but as someone who believed two people could face something unexpected together. She had practiced the conversation over and over, imagined every possible reaction, but none of those versions included this. She stood with her hand lightly resting over her stomach, not noticeably pregnant yet, but feeling the certainty of the life growing inside her like a soft pulse beneath her ribs. She had pictured him stepping closer, asking questions, needing time to process. She never imagined rejection delivered with the efficiency of a business transaction. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy, filling the wide office in a way even the city outside could not drown. Lana swallowed, but the movement felt painful, like trying to breathe with a stone lodged in her chest. "I didn't ruin anything," she managed, although the words were quiet, thinner than she wanted them to be. She didn't want to cry in front of him. Not here, not now. Her voice tried to be steady, even when her fingers trembled. Life doesn't follow plans. Sometimes things happen we don't expect. Sometimes. He cut her off with a slight raise of his hand. A gesture of control. A gesture she had once found composed, admirable even. Now it felt like a door slamming shut. "I don't want this," he said. Not cruelly. Not angrily. Just coldly. Indifferently. The lack of emotion hurt more than anger ever could have. "I have a path. A direction. A timeline. This doesn't fit. You don't fit." The words stole the air from the room. Lana blinked, but no tears fell. Not yet. Her heart was cracking, yes, but the pieces had not fallen apart. Not while she still had strength to hold them. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for any sign of the man she had believed him to be. Something gentle. Something human. Something real. But all she found was resolve. "When did I stop fitting?" she asked finally. The question wasn't for him. It was for her. The moment she needed clarity, something to anchor herself to, so she wouldn't drown in confusion. He didn't hesitate. "When you became a complication." The room seemed to tilt. Her throat tightened. The child inside her fluttered faintly, as if reacting to her heartbeat. She placed her hand more firmly over her stomach, not protectively from him, but protectively from the pain rising inside her. I thought you cared," she whispered. He didn't answer. And the silence was an answer. She nodded once, the movement slow, controlled. If she stayed another second, she would break, and breaking in front of him felt like an insult to what she had been, what she had hoped for, what she still needed to become. She turned and walked toward the elevator, her steps quiet but steady. She didn't ask him to reconsider. She didn't point out that the child was his. She didn't beg him to love her. Because love does not survive where there is no room for it. Outside, the city wind bit sharply at her skin. She clutched her coat around herself and inhaled air that felt too cold, too thin. She did not know how she would manage. She did not know what the future would look like. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would not let her children ever feel unwanted. Pregnancy did not unfold like the gentle image she had once held in her mind. There was no glowing, no soft radiance, no peaceful preparation. There was nausea that came in waves so strong she could barely stand, doctor visits she attended alone, and nights where she lay awake listening to her own breathing because silence felt too heavy. Lana rented a small room above an old bakery, the scent of bread and sugar drifting through the floorboards each morning. It was warm and safe enough, but the walls were thin and her loneliness echoed there louder than any footsteps in the hallway. Her belly grew, steadily, undeniably. She kept working as long as she could, sewing dresses at a corner table near the bakery's window, stitching color and life into fabric even when she felt as though her own life had dimmed. Customers smiled at her politely, sometimes kindly, and sometimes with that faint pity reserved for women alone. Lana nodded through it all. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. The world often believed it understood things it had never lived. The day the twins were born was cold and sharp, winter knocking at the edges of autumn. It happened faster than the doctors expected, her body moving through pain with a fierce, aching urgency. The first cry came loudly, piercing the quiet of the delivery room like a small, brave declaration of existence. The second cry was softer, trembling, but steady, a whisper that insisted on being heard. 2 girls. 2 hearts. 2 lives that instantly changed everything. They were tiny, warm, red-cheeked, their fingers curling instinctively around her. Lana held them both, one in each arm, and felt something inside her settle. There was exhaustion, overwhelming and deep, but layered beneath it was a quiet, powerful certainty. The world could be heartless, and people could fail, but these 2? They were hers. She kissed the tops of their heads, breathing in the scent of newborn skin and milk and something indescribably pure. She named them Ember and Sky, one name for fire and one for open air, because she hoped they would always carry both warmth and freedom inside them. Raising them alone was not easy. It was messy, exhausting, relentless. Nights blurred into mornings, and mornings stretched into days that felt too short for all that needed to be done. Lana learned to balance one baby on her hip while feeding the other, learned how to function on an hour of sleep, learned to quiet her own fears because the girls needed her calm more than her tears. But there were moments, small, shining moments, that made everything else soften. When the girls laughed for the first time, their tiny hands reaching for each other. When they fell asleep curled against her sides like 2 small suns. When she realized that even though she was tired down to her bones, her heart was full in a way she had never known possible. The years passed gently and fiercely at once. Ember and Sky grew into children who understood sharing without instruction, who held hands when they crossed the street, who giggled in unison at jokes only they understood. Lana worked when they were at preschool, sewing commission dresses in the warm light of her little workroom. She budgeted every dollar and made meals stretch farther than logic allowed. It was not an easy life, but it was a life built with care. She never spoke of their father. And the girls never asked, not yet. They were too busy discovering snowflakes and crayons and the way raindrops raced down windows. On the 5th winter morning since their birth, the wind outside was sharp enough to sting their cheeks as they bundled into coats and scarves. They trudged through the snow toward the bus stop, Ember holding Lana's left hand and Sky holding her right, their boots making soft crunching sounds with every step. The air smelled of winter, clean, cold, quiet. They stood near the bus stop sign, breath visible in clouds. The girls began chatting about how the snow sparkled like stars had fallen, and Lana smiled at the metaphor, at how beauty came naturally to them. She didn't know that on this ordinary morning, on this ordinary street corner, her past was already turning toward her. She didn't know that in just a few minutes, a car would slow beside them, a window would lower, and a pair of brown eyes, eyes that matched her daughter's, would finally recognize what they had never expected to see again. She only felt the cold, the weight of two small hands in hers, and the quiet strength of a life she had built from the ashes of heartbreak. The car approached slowly, tires whispering over snow, its dark paint reflecting the pale winter sky. Lana didn't notice it at first. She was focused on adjusting Sky's scarf, making sure her neck was warm. Ember was kicking lightly at a mound of snow, humming a tune she had made up. The street was quiet, and the moment felt ordinary, one of those small, forgettable mornings that blend into memory. But then the car stopped. Not rolling past, not searching for parking. Stopped. Lana felt the shift before she even looked up. That strange prickle of awareness, like the air had changed shape. The tinted window lowered, and the past looked out at her through a familiar pair of brown eyes. For a heartbeat, Lana didn't breathe. The world did not stop, but it slowed, thickened, like time hesitated between seconds. She recognized him instantly. His hair was slightly longer than she remembered, swept back in a style that made him look older, sharper. His expression, however, was not the cold certainty she remembered. Instead, there was something raw, something stunned, something unraveling. Ember noticed the car then, and being 5, she turned wide-eyed curiosity toward him. She tugged on Lana's coat lightly. "Mama, someone's looking." Her voice was small but bright, unaware of the gravity settling around them. Lana finally found her breath, though it was thin. Her heart pounded with a rhythm that was half dread, half something she didn't want to name. She didn't look away. She didn't step back. She simply stood, her daughter's hands in hers. His mouth parted slightly, as if he meant to speak but the words tangled. When he did speak, his voice was quieter than she remembered, almost unsteady. "Lana." He said her name like it surprised him, like saying it out loud made everything real. She held his gaze, though she could feel her pulse in her throat. She didn't want to speak first. She didn't want to offer anything. The silence that stretched between them was heavy, filled with 5 years of everything that had not been said. Sky blinked up at him, her eyes reflecting his own. It was unmistakable. It was undeniable. A child does not lie with her face. Ember stepped closer to her sister, as if drawn by instinct to remain connected to what mattered most. They looked up at him with open curiosity, innocent, unguarded, unaware of what their existence meant. His eyes flicked from one girl to the other, and Lana watched understanding dawn across his expression with something slow and devastating. It was not a moment of simple realization, it was a collapse. A shifting of everything he had known about his life. His breath caught, chest rising then faltering. The shock on his face was not theatrical, it was the shock of a man who suddenly saw the consequences of a choice he once believed had no cost. He stepped out of the car, the winter air catching in his lungs. He moved carefully, as though afraid any sudden motion would break the delicate reality forming in front of him. He didn't come too close. He didn't reach out. Instead, he stood a few steps away, snow crunching softly beneath his shoes. "Are they?" His voice cracked slightly. He tried again. "They're mine, aren't they?" The question was unnecessary. It had already answered itself. Lana felt her jaw tighten. Not in anger, but in memory, of the day he had chosen himself and left her to choose survival. "Yes," she said simply. No bitterness. Just truth. The girls looked between them, sensing something important but not understanding it. Ember whispered, "Mama, who is he?" with the frank curiosity of a child who is unafraid of answers. Lana did not look away from him when she answered. Her voice was steady, though her heart was trembling. "This is your father." Sky tilted her head. Ember blinked. And he closed his eyes for a moment, just long enough to reveal how deeply the word struck. He opened them again, and the shock had not faded. But in its place, something else had begun to form, something fragile, painful, and real. 1,000 things hung suspended in the cold air, apologies unsaid, regret too heavy to speak, fear of what could not be undone. But beneath all of that was something quieter, something that came from somewhere neither of them expected. Recognition. Not just of the girls, but of the life he had walked away from. The bus arrived then, brakes hissing. The ordinary world continued, indifferent to the moment that had just rewritten them all. Lana did not know what came next. She only knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Snow continued to fall as they walked toward the small cafe across the street, the twins holding onto Lana's hands, unaware that their lives had just been split into before and after. The cafe was warm, smelling of cinnamon and freshly brewed coffee, a stark contrast to the sharp cold outside. They found a corner table where the window fogged with the heat of the room. Ember and Sky climbed into their seats, legs too short to touch the floor, their boots dangling as they looked around with curiosity. Lana helped them unwrap their scarves and mittens, brushing snowflakes from their hair. She moved slowly, deliberately, as if holding the world steady with her hands. He sat across from her, but it was clear he had no idea how to begin. His posture was rigid, shoulders tense in a way that spoke of someone used to control, to structure, to certainty. Here, control meant nothing. He kept looking at the girls, then back at Lana, his mind working at a pace that showed in every shift of his expression. He looked like a man confronted with a mirror that showed not only himself but everything he had once denied. The waiter arrived, smiling warmly, and took their order. The twins asked for hot chocolate, speaking over each other in excited bursts. Lana ordered tea. He said nothing, staring at the menu without seeing it, and finally whispered that he would have the same. When the waiter left, silence settled again, but this time, it was not the silence of absence. It was the silence of truth pressing to the surface. Lana did not rush him. She sat with her hands wrapped around the warm cup the moment it arrived, letting the heat anchor her. The twins stirred whipped cream into their chocolate, humming softly, completely content. He watched them, his face softening in a way that startled her. It was not the softness of romance or nostalgia. It was something deeper. Something like awe. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked finally. The words were quiet, almost fragile. Lana expected anger, accusation, disbelief. But there was none of that. There was confusion, regret, and something like grief. She looked at him evenly. "Because on the day I needed you most, you made it very clear that I didn't belong in your plans." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't inject emotion. The truth didn't need emphasis. "If I had told you, I would have spent every day waiting for you to walk away again." His jaw tightened. Not in defense, but in realization. He didn't argue. He didn't try to explain. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, there was something stripped bare inside them. "I thought I knew what my life was supposed to be," he said, voice low. "I thought success meant being untouchable. I thought responsibility was a cage. I thought love was something that would slow me down." Lana listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't soften. "And now?" she asked. He swallowed, the motion slow. "Now I see my own eyes staring back at me," he said, looking at the girls again. "And I realize what I lost before I ever had the chance to understand it." The twins continued sipping their hot chocolate, not realizing that they were the center of something vast and trembling. Ember leaned into Sky, whispering something that made them both giggle. The sound was bright and full and alive. He watched them, and his shoulders lowered, not in defeat, but in surrender. Not to Lana, not to the past, but to the truth. He had missed 5 years of scraped knees and midnight crying and first words and first steps and birthdays with small homemade cakes. 5 years of laughter he never heard. 5 years of love he had not known he needed. "Lana," he began, but she lifted her hand gently, not to silence him, but to slow him. "We're not going to solve this today," she said. Her voice was calm. "You don't get to step in and claim a role you walked away from without understanding what that means. The girls don't know you. They don't know what a father is. And I won't let their hearts break because yours finally opened." He nodded, the acceptance quiet and real. "I don't want to take anything," he said. "I only want to earn the right to be here. However long that takes." Lana looked at him, really looked, and for the first time since their reunion, she saw not the young man who had chosen ambition over love, but the man learning what love required. Outside, the snowfall continued, soft and steady, covering everything in white, as if the world was offering them a clean surface to step forward on. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But a beginning. He did not disappear after that day. He did not make grand promises or dramatic speeches. Instead, he showed up, quietly, consistently, in ways that could not be faked. At first, it was small things. He came to the bakery on mornings when Lana worked, sitting at a corner table while the twins colored in their notebooks. He didn't interrupt. He didn't demand attention. He was simply there, learning their rhythms. Ember always drew flowers with wide petals, while Sky colored everything in shades of orange and gold. He learned that Ember liked counting the people who walked by the window and that Sky liked inventing stories about them. He listened, really listened, even though these details would seem trivial to anyone else. To him, they were pieces of a life he was just beginning to understand. Then came the afternoons in the park. The snow had begun to melt, leaving patches of soft earth beneath the swings. The girls would run toward the playground, scarves trailing behind them like banners, and he followed at a respectful distance, not wanting to overwhelm them. Eventually, Sky would call, "Come push us," and Ember would giggle and wave him closer. He was cautious at first, as though afraid happiness might frighten them, but their laughter broke through something inside him. He pushed the swings gently, and when the girls squealed for more, he learned how to let joy grow without fear of losing control. The town began to notice. People whispered, some with surprise, some with curiosity. They had known Lana for years as the woman raising her children alone with quiet strength. And now the father had appeared, not entitled or demanding, but trying. Truly trying. Lana ignored the whispers, they were just noise. What mattered was the girls. And the girls were blooming like spring flowers. Ember had become chattier, telling long stories with her hands. Sky had begun asking questions about everything: why snow melted, why the sky changed color at sunset, why some leaves stayed on trees while others fell. Their world was growing, and Lana watched, heart tight and wide at the same time. But healing is rarely simple. Some nights, after the twins had fallen asleep, Lana lay awake staring at the ceiling. Memories of the past returned not as ghosts but as echoes, his voice saying she ruined his plans, the look in his eyes that day, the coldness she had survived. Trust was not something that could be rebuilt quickly, and she did not let herself forget that. She had survived once by walking away. She needed to know she could do it again if she had to. So she held her heart carefully, like something still mending. He understood this more than she expected. One evening, after the girls had fallen asleep in the living room, Ember curled up with a blanket, Sky sprawled like a starfish, he stayed behind to help clean up crayons and small shoes scattered across the floor. The house was quiet except for the soft whir of the heater and the hum of the refrigerator. He placed a tiny sock on the arm of the couch and looked at Lana with a seriousness that was not heavy but honest. "I know I can't change the past," he said. His voice was low, steady, without self-pity. And I'm not asking you to pretend it didn't happen. I was selfish. I thought strength meant choosing myself above everything else. I thought vulnerability was weakness. I was wrong. Lana didn't answer right away. She rinsed a mug in the sink, the warm water running over her fingers. She felt his words settle into the space between them, not demanding a response but offering something instead: accountability. She turned and leaned against the counter, arms loosely crossed, not defensive, just present. I'm not trying to punish you, she said after a moment. But I need to move slowly. Not for myself. For them. He nodded once. I'll move at their pace. And at yours. Even if that means waiting. There was no desperation in his voice. No push. Just patience. That night, as he stepped outside into the cold, Lana watched from the window. Snow had begun to fall again, thin flakes drifting through the air like feathers. He paused, looking up, the streetlight catching in his hair. He stood there for a long moment, letting the snow touch him, and then walked away slowly, not leaving, but giving space. Lana realized something then. She was no longer afraid of him hurting her in the same way. The real fear now was different, the fear that he might truly have changed. Because if he had, she would have to decide whether she was ready to open a door she had sealed to survive. And the hardest part of rebuilding love is not the forgiveness. It's the hope that rises when you are finally safe enough to feel it again. Spring arrived slowly, as if it, too, was cautious. Snow receded from the sidewalks in thin, dissolving sheets, leaving behind damp earth and the first timid blades of green. The town seemed to stretch and breathe, waking up after a long, cold sleep. Lana noticed it in the way the air smelled different, how sunlight lingered longer in the afternoons, how the twins begged to play outside even when the ground was still muddy. Change was subtle, gradual, but undeniable. He was part of that change. By now, he had become a presence woven into their days. Not constant in a way that overwhelmed them, but consistent in a way that built trust. He picked the girls up from preschool when Lana had extra work. He repaired the wobbly kitchen chair no one else ever had time to fix. He began learning how to braid hair, though his first attempts were uneven and lopsided, causing Sky to laugh and Ember to announce that it looked like a bird's nest. He laughed with them, not embarrassed, not frustrated, trying again until he got it right. Sometimes Lana watched him when he didn't know she was watching. She noticed the small details, how carefully he listened when the girls talked, even when the stories were long and childlike, how he knelt to look them in the eyes instead of talking down to them, how he gave each of them attention without comparison, recognizing them as two people, not just a matching pair. She noticed the softness in his expression, the quietness in his posture. These were not things that could be performed or rehearsed. These were the signs of someone learning to love without expecting anything in return. But healing was not a straight path. One evening, Lana found herself overwhelmed, not by exhaustion, but by the past rising too quickly. The girls were asleep, the house was quiet, and suddenly everything felt heavy. She went out to the back porch to breathe. The spring air was cool, damp with the promise of rain. She pulled her knees to her chest and stared into the yard where the grass was just beginning to return. She didn't hear him approach at first. He stepped onto the porch quietly, hands in his pockets, as though asking the space for permission. When she didn't move away, he sat beside her, close, but not touching. The sky above them was darkening, the first stars faint and uncertain. "You're quiet tonight," he said softly. Lana kept her gaze forward. "Some days take more strength," she replied, not to shut him out but because the truth was all she had to give. He nodded, accepting the words without probing. Silence settled again, but not the heavy silence of years ago. This silence was shared, breathable. After a few minutes, she exhaled. It's hard sometimes, she admitted. Not because of you now. But because of what you were then. I survived that version of you. And some part of me is afraid he could return. His breath caught, though only slightly. He turned his head to look at her, expression honest and unguarded. He won't, he said. Not as a promise made to convince her, but as a truth he had learned through losing everything. That version of me didn't know who he was. He thought power meant standing alone. But I've seen the cost of that now. And I don't ever want to be that man again. Lana let the words settle. Not absorbing them fully, not rejecting them. Letting them exist. You're different, she said quietly. I see it. But part of loving someone is trusting that change lasts. And trust takes time. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't try to close the distance. He simply nodded. I'll give time to the things that deserve it, he replied. They sat together while night thickened, the breeze carrying the faint scent of thawing earth and wet leaves. It felt like the beginning of something, not sudden, not blazing, but slow and steady. Like the first warmth of spring that doesn't announce itself, only lingers a little longer each day. When the porch light flickered on and cast a soft glow around them, Lana leaned, just barely, until her shoulder touched his. It was not an embrace. It was not a decision. It was an answer to a question neither of them had spoken aloud. He didn't move. He didn't breathe too deeply. He simply stayed. And for the first time, the past felt like something behind them, not gone, not erased, but no longer the force directing their future. Sometimes love begins loudly. But sometimes it returns quietly, like spring. Summer arrived warm and full, the kind of summer that smelled like sun-warmed grass and tasted like melted ice cream. Days stretched longer, and the twins spent hours running barefoot in the yard, their laughter bright and free. Lana watched them from the porch some days, sewing in the sunlight, while he knelt in the grass helping them build forts from blankets and overturned chairs. It looked almost ordinary from the outside. A family, comfortable together. But beneath the surface, the quiet work of love and forgiveness continued, slow, careful, fragile. One afternoon, the town hosted a small festival in the park. Music played from speakers tied to lamp posts, children chased bubbles through the air, and food stalls filled the space with the smell of cinnamon and roasted corn. Ember and Sky ran ahead, hands clasped as always, exclaiming at everything they saw. He walked beside Lana, not touching her but always close enough that she could feel his presence. The world around them was full of color and movement, but the space between them felt like something delicate and warm, something opening carefully. People noticed them together. Some smiled in quiet approval. Some whispered. Lana was used to whispers. But now they didn't sting. Now they felt distant, unimportant. Her life no longer needed to defend itself. The twins insisted he try cotton candy for the first time, and they laughed when it stuck to his hands and he looked genuinely confused by how something could be both sticky and weightless. Lana laughed too. Not politely, not cautiously. A real laugh, light and unguarded. He looked at her then with an expression she had not seen in years, not desire, not longing, but something deeper. Something like reverence. As though he was seeing her not as someone he lost, but someone he was grateful to have found again. Later, when the girls tired and fell asleep in the grass, their heads resting on each other's shoulders, he helped Lana carry them to a quiet bench under the shade of a tree. The air was warm and golden. Cicadas buzzed lazily. The moment felt suspended in time. He spoke first, quietly, not to disturb the sleeping children. "You're stronger than I ever understood," he said. Not admiration spoken to impress her. Not praise meant to earn a reaction. just truth. You raised them with so much love. You built something beautiful without me. I'm grateful they had you." Lana's heartbeat shifted, not faster, just deeper. She studied his profile, the softened edges of him, the sincerity in his voice. She thought of the man he once was, the one driven by ambition and fear of vulnerability, and the man beside her now, who seemed willing to kneel in grass just to make two little girls laugh. She ran her fingers lightly through Ember's hair as she spoke. "I wasn't always strong," she said. "There were days I thought I couldn't do it. Days I cried when they couldn't see. Days I wanted someone else to carry the weight with me. But I learned strength because I had no choice." He nodded, his expression pained but steady. "I know I can't undo the past," he said. "But I want to help now. Not because I feel guilty. But because I love them. And because I love you. I don't expect you to say it back. I just want you to know." The words hung there, not heavy, not demanding, but offered gently, like an open palm. Lana felt the old wound inside her stir, not because it reopened, but because it was finally being met with something that might heal it. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she watched sunlight dance through the leaves, listened to the slow breaths of her daughters, felt the warmth of the summer air settle over them. "You're right," she said softly. "You can't undo what happened. And I can't forget it. But I see you now. I see the way you are with them. I see the effort you make. And I see the way you've changed." She turned her head and met his gaze. "That matters." He exhaled, and it sounded like relief. They sat there for a long while in silence, but it was a good silence. A growing silence. A silence that made space instead of closing it. Lana rested her head lightly on his shoulder, not as a promise, not as a decision, but as a beginning. And this time, he did not move slowly. He simply let himself be hers, gently, without fear. Love did not return all at once. It returned quietly, like the evening summer light. Soft, warm, and finally welcomed. Autumn came softly, almost shy, letting summer linger a little longer than usual. Leaves began to turn, slow strokes of amber and gold brushing the edges of the trees. The air cooled just enough to make morning breaths visible again, but the days were still warm enough for the girls to run outside barefoot. Change moved gently now, not like a storm, but like a tide rolling in, consistent and certain. By then, he was no longer just visiting. His presence in their lives felt natural, not forced. There were routines now. He picked the twins up from preschool on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He made breakfast on weekends, always burning the first batch of pancakes but laughing through it. He read bedtime stories with voices and sound effects that made the girls dissolve into giggles. Lana found herself smiling without needing to try. Yet the greatest changes were quieter. The way Sky leaned against his chest when she was sleepy. The way Ember reached for his hand when crossing the street. The way the girls' eyes lit up when they saw him walk through the door. These were not the signs of a father learning, they were the signs of a father becoming. One evening, the sky deepened into a soft purple haze as the sun began to set. Lana and he stood in the kitchen, finishing dinner dishes, while the twins played in the living room building a castle from couch cushions. The warm hum of home filled the air. Something easy, something real. He dried another plate and set it down carefully. "I want to talk to you about something," he said, voice steady but thick with meaning. Lana paused, not fearful, but attentive. He met her eyes, and there was no hesitation in his gaze. "I've been looking for a house," he continued. "A real home. With space for the girls to run. With a yard. And a room for your sewing. Somewhere that feels like a place to grow, not just get by. Lana blinked, surprised not by the gesture, but by the thoughtfulness underneath it. He wasn't asking her to move into his world. He was offering to build a new one that fit all of them. I don't want to take you away from here, he went on. This town is part of your story. It's part of theirs. But I want them to have a backyard where they can chase lightning bugs at night. I want you to have a window where the sun hits your sewing table. And we want, he corrected himself, glancing toward the girls, to have somewhere we can stand together. Lana's chest tightened, but not with fear this time, something warmer, gentler. She set the dish towel down and stepped closer, searching his face for the man he was now. She found him there fully, present, grounded, open. Is this what you want? She asked softly. He didn't look away. This is the only thing I've ever been certain of. In the living room, Ember squealed in triumph as their blanket castle finally stood without collapsing. Sky clapped her hands, announcing that it was the Royal Palace of Unbreakable Love. The name was ridiculous, childish, and somehow perfect. Lana laughed. And then she realized she was crying, not with sadness, but with a release so deep it felt like breathing after holding her breath for years. He stepped closer, not rushing, not claiming, simply offering his arms. This time, she moved into them without hesitation. His embrace was warm and steady, like something built to last. Later that week, they drove out to see the house. It sat on a hill, with a sprawling yard and an old oak tree reaching its branches over the roof like a guardian. The porch was wide enough for summer nights and morning coffee. The windows caught sunlight in all the right places. The twins ran through the rooms, calling out, "This one is mine, and this is where our castle goes." Lana watched them, her hand resting lightly in his, and felt something inside her settle in a way it never had before. Not a return to the life she once imagined, but the beginning of a better one. A life built not from what was lost, but from what was finally found. And in that warm, golden, sunlit house, love was not a plan or a promise. It was a home.